Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Wei. Today I want to talk to you about this camera, one of my favorite, Canon 7. I have two of these because I kind of like them. They're funky looking. With the selenium meter in the front, it really gives you that 50s and 60s look. The camera, it was made kind of in competition to a Leica M2. Just like the M2, it has multiple frame lines, and the widest frame line is actually a 35mm. So you can select manually. So once you mount the lens, you select manually from 35 to 50 to 85 or 100 or 135. So you have all these selections. But I haven't really seen a lot of people using lenses on rangefinder that's longer than 50mm. It's kind of looking for trouble. But I know landscape photographer, if you shoot something a lot of times, near infinity, that the longer lens does provide the additional reach. But if you want to shoot people photography like me, I say the longest I ever want to use is the 50. And oftentimes, if you're a street photographer, you probably have a 35 on here. Let me see. So this camera uses Leica M39 mount. So I need a Leica M39 mount will work, including this collapsible 50mm f3.5. This old Leica lens. I think your rangefinder accuracy on the Canon with a viewfinder, it's probably still better than the old Leica screw mount cameras, because they are, first they have two holes, you have to look through them. B, they have no parallax correction. This one, it does have parallax. The downside about the Canon 7, as you can see, it does not have any sort of a hot shoe or cold shoe on top. If you want a cold shoe, they do make an accessory that go on top. I think that's the cold shoe. But for triggering a flash, you have to use a PC cable and connect to the PC to the side. It can be a pain, but especially I think it doesn't have anything on top. If you want to use anything wider than a 35, well, 28 you might be able to get by kind of looking around the viewfinder, outside of that 35mm frame line. But for anything wider than 28, what are you going to do? Well, can't really do anything unless you have that optional accessory that allow you to do that, to mount the external finder. So, but if you're 35mm or 50mm like me, then this can be an advantage, because it's less things to catch in a way when you put the camera in a camera bag. So it's not really a problem. In fact, for me, as the less things on the camera, the merrier for me. So especially in terms of taking it out of the camera bag. That's one of the reasons I like the rangefinder over the SLR cameras, or any camera with the prism on top, or EVF prism on top, something like that. Just adding another additional space require another additional space in the camera bag. Since I have two of these Canon 7, I want to point this out. Is you notice on this one, the font on the Canon 7 is a lot thicker than this, which is interesting, because I understand these cameras were made in an era maybe the quality control wasn't as stringent as nowadays. So it's possible that these cameras are from the parts are from a different supplier, or they could be maybe made by a different machine that stamp these. So one of the machine has a little bit thinner font than the other one. It's just kind of interesting to point that out. I acquired this thinner font one from Japan, and the thicker one is here in the US. From looking at the serial number too, this one is actually slightly newer than this one. So maybe that's also tells me something, I don't know, but it's kind of interesting to point that out. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the lenses. So on this camera, I have a Leica collapsible 50mm f3.5 Elmar lens. This is the older lens, but I don't recommend people collapse this lens into this Canon. It's not made for it. It will work if you're very carefully put it in, but what will happen is on this Leica lens, you see it has a what do we call it? Protruding parts, or it's used to, once you're fully extended, you can lock the lens so it doesn't retract back. But when you push it back, this thing will scrape black paint underneath here. I didn't scrape this camera, so you won't see any brassing here, but it will scrape your black flocking paint. So it's not recommended. So you can use it. I still use it, but you just have to not collapse the lens. And better yet, some people, they'll put some rubber band around it, so that way you can never fully push it back in. I have tried gently collapse it before. I think the back of this lens does not make contact with the shutter. So something to bear in mind. Leave it open on these like collapsible lens. But then the argument is, well, if I leave it open, it kind of defeats the purpose why I want the lens to be collapsed, because it doesn't reduce the size of the camera anymore, which is true. All right, so I want to do a quick comparison with the M2. This is my Leica M2. You see the look and feel kind of similar. The major difference I want to show you is, here we go, is you can see the rangefinder, the distance between the two. They call it, I think they call it the rangefinder base. The M2 is a little bit wider than the Canon 7, which means that this rangefinder, in theory, is more accurate than this, because on the rangefinder camera, it takes both these windows to figure out the distance by moving the internal mirrors or prisms to establish the distance. So, but in real world use, I don't think it make any difference. If you don't use anything longer than the 50, I think this is just fine. Just something I want to point it out, that the rangefinder base on the M2 is a little bit wider. Both have, on this M2, which is a lever rewind, it does have a timer, and so as the Canon. Canon comes with a timer. I know on the button rewind, most commonly they don't have this. They try to reduce price or something, that reduce the cost, so they don't have this. It can be good. I don't know. Really depends on what people preference. I feel like if you only have one camera, you want to shoot for mostly general purpose, the self timer is a good one, because what if you need to be in the shot and nobody else taking the picture for you? It can be very useful. But just real quick, if you don't have, this is at my M1. See, if you don't have a self timer, it feels cleaner. But I don't recommend it to not have the self timer if that's your only camera. So on this M2, this is a Voigtlander Nocton 50 f1.5. What they call those, vintage lens. I know they don't make these anymore, but I really like the look of it, so I like to shoot with it. But to each our own. Some people don't like it because it hurts their hands. This notches hurt their hand. Anyway, that's for a different video, different day, different topic we can discuss. Back to Canon 7. So on the 7, another advantage of this camera over the Leica is the shutter on these guys are titanium, whereas on the Leica is a cloth. Why the difference? Well, the titanium is a little louder than the cloth shutter. However, from my experience looking at old cameras over the years, is a lot of these Leicas, people tend to somehow forget the lens cover on the camera. Like if they carry around, if you use a lot of that, they leave the lens cap off. So as a result, is light coming in. Sometimes if it's a bright sunny day, the lens acting like a magnifier. It actually create a pinholes on the shutter, and resulting the lens, the shutter to fail. You have to replace it or patch it. Whereas you're never gonna have a problem with the metal shutter. So these are, I feel like, a lot more durable in the long run. On the other hand, if you break it, push a finger through it or something, you're probably gonna have a hard time finding a replacement part for that too. So something to think about. But yeah, this is kind of my general review on the Canon 7. I'm sure there's other features such as the meters and stuff. I don't want to discuss that because a lot of times on these cameras the meter is almost dead. So what's the point? So I always use my handheld meter. Oh, one more thing. If you are to buy one of these Canon 7, I highly recommend find one that's being serviced already or prepare to get serviced, because the rangefinder, both the camera, when I first bought them, they were in great condition. The seller says it was great, but the rangefinder is off. So I had to send both of these to DAG for service. So something to think about. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one.